Yo, Adriel, what's up, man? Why do you look so depressed?
Well, I got another Slack message. Apparently, there are some things going on with our pipelines, and then someone asked me to figure out what's going on. I just wish there was a better way to figure this stuff out. You know, like apply basic SRE fundamentals, but to our pipelines.
Don't worry about that. It's not just you. If it's any encouragement, I've been suffering for that from years. CI/CD observability. Actually, curious, who here has suffered from lack of observability in CI/CD pipelines? Okay, so as you can see, you're not the only one. We're in the same boat together, and actually not just in the workplace. Even us as maintainers suffer that day in and day out. And this is actually an example from just over a week ago. We were at the OTel maintainers Slack channel, and complaining about what goes on here. The CI on this PR is taking way too long to find the runners for the running the tests. Sounds familiar?
Sounds familiar.
So that's also in open source, suffering the same thing, and I've been complaining about it for years, which drove me about a couple of years ago to raise the pain of not just the importance of CI/CD observability, but also to standardize on this. And to be honest, no better place than OpenTelemetry.
OpenTelemetry. That's that observability framework thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's today essentially the de facto standard for instrumenting, for emitting, for collecting telemetry data from your applications. Everyone uses that today in monitoring production environments. So why not do exactly that also for CI/CD pipelines? So that led to this OTEP, OpenTelemetry Enhancement proposal that came up about 2 years ago to do exactly that.
Well, I'm looking at this quite handy screenshot you have here, but I'm seeing that it was closed, not merged. So what happened to that?
Okay, you got me there, but good end to this story. This OTEP, this OpenTelemetry Enhancement proposal, ended up with another proposal to form a special interest group, a SIG, dedicated to exactly that, to standardizing on CI/CD observability, that actually you and I started together, so woo. So that happened about over a year ago now.
Very cool. And recently, we actually wrote a blog post on the CNCF Foundation. You can check it out there through the QR code. But it's centered around our standardization efforts, specifically around some of the common sets of attributes that we've been working to deliver in the industry.
So essentially, we have the SIG, that's nice, but what exactly are we trying to standardize on?
That's SIMCOM for short, or semantic conventions.
Semantic what?
So the formal definition of semantic conventions is a common set of semantic attributes which provide meaning to data when collecting, producing, and consuming it.
Okay, so put in plain words, plain English, that's the lingua franca, or the common language for describing the telemetry that your system emits. Essentially, how your telemetry is represented. You see here in the screenshot, the attribute, it defines the name, the type, and so on, how your telemetry is represented in the different signals, logs, metrics, traces, span data, and what's the relationship also between the signals, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you think about like a common microservice architecture, probably communicating over the network. Semantic conventions is going to define some of the fields that you may attach to those communications so you can observe them in a consistent way across the board. Another example might be tracing within GitHub or GitLab pipelines, where you could analyze them based off of a set of attributes consistently, no matter which vendor they came from.
Wait, you said just traces from GitLab and GitHub pipelines? On these like GitLab pipelines and GitHub actions or workflows or something like that?
Yeah, that's what the vendors call them, but they're basically the same fundamental concept, right? So when we standardize on those concepts, we're actually able to benefit from the consistency in how we observe them, no matter what vendor they come from. Now, there are a couple minute differences, right, between the two, maybe some vendor-specific things, and that's what vendor extensions are for, but fundamentally we can describe them in the same way as a CI/CD pipeline or a CI/CD pipeline task.
Super cool. Okay, so I understand it definitely makes sense to have a common language to describe these things, but is that just theoretical, or do we actually have traces coming out of these systems?
We actually have traces. So the screenshot you're seeing here is from a real trace. Ironically, we're using OpenTelemetry to observe OpenTelemetry workflows.
That's cool. So there was that case that we talked about before, right? I showed the Slack channel chatter with the OTel maintainers. What ended up with that one?
Yeah, so we actually were able to use the observability data that we had to be able to figure out a little bit more what's going on and whether or not the behavior they were observing was the case. Now, normally, what would you have to do? You'd have to go talk to all the engineers, or go to every single repository, and then go to all the different runs, and then look at runs from weeks ago, right? You'd take quite a bit of time to go figure out if something like that was actually occurring. But because we're observing them, in a matter of seconds, we can figure out that, yeah, that's actually what's occurring. For here is actually a screenshot from a Signos dashboard that showed a big uptick in the P50 duration of the pipelines that were running in the project during that period of time.
Yeah, that's actually very clear to see visually the anomaly there and something messed up. But by the way, you said you're working with Signos. I don't work with Signos. Do I have to use your backend analytics tool to do that?
No, that's the beauty of OpenTelemetry. It's vendor agnostic, right? And you have the same fundamental standards no matter where you go. So you just choose your favorite OTLP compliant backend. In fact, this screenshot is from Honeycomb. Same set of data. You can see the same spike in durations during the same period of time.
Super cool. I don't need to stick to one. I have standard. Any backend supports it. Implement. So what's next?
Do you want to see it in action?
Yeah, finally. Please do.
All right.
Demo time. Give him some applause. That's going to be challenging. Let's sacrifice something for the demo gods to make it happen.
Hopefully everyone can see that.
Can you see that? All good.
I'm going to refresh it just to make sure I'm connected to the internet. There we go. All right, so here we have the, if we look at the last 14 days, this is a Honeycomb dashboard. We have, the P50 duration for minutes for the pipelines that have been running over the period of time. We've also got the P75, and now I've only been collecting data for, 2 weeks, so that's why we went to the 14-day mark. And if I recall correctly, that scenario, that incident happened somewhere between the 21st and the 23rd. So we can actually see there are some outliers here, right? There's some normally long-running jobs. But during this period of time, we can see a spike in the duration. So let's just go ahead and zoom in and take a look at what we get. First off, if we notice here, we have these things grouped by the repository name. So that's a semantic attribute that we're able to use here. And we've got 5 different repositories that we're collecting trace telemetry from. If we look at the different line graphs here, we can see that the Weaver one wasn't really effective. And it was probably because there were no pipelines running at that time. So we can just ignore that piece of data. But the contrib repository is the one that definitely experienced some latency. So let's just filter to that group. And let's look at some of the traces during that period of time. Now, the OpenTelemetry collector contrib repository has well over 100 workflows that run every single time you make a commit or open a pull request. It's quite a lot. And they're actually pretty performant. Usually they get done, if I recall correctly, just from having contributed, they're usually done in like 8 minutes. But here, during this period of time, we see a build and test pipeline to be pretty long. So let's look at that trace. Oh, 1 hour and 12 minutes. That's a long time for the build and test workflows, for sure. Just, if I was an engineer in that team, I'd be concerned. That's a long time. There's got to be something up. Well, if we look at the Go vulnerability check job within there, This one is usually a matrix build, and you can see this by the fact that you've got go vulnerability check and then like a parentheses with the name, and you've got multiples of these. So these are parallelized jobs or concurrent jobs that are running in this repository. And if we look at them, we can see as we scroll down that this gap here starts to increase over time. It gets larger and larger and larger. Now, there's an improvement to be made here for sure, right? We could actually just say that's the queue time and it could show a little queue span. But right now, it's just white empty space that is showing that there's a latency, an increase in duration of these pipelines that are not being captured during the actual run of the pipeline. So just by looking at this, we can obviously see that there certainly was that behavior that people felt they were observing was indeed actually occurring during that period of time. And because we have some of these semantic attributes, we can hop right into the specific repository, copy out the link, and go directly to the task run of the job, just because it's a semantic attribute we have available. Now that's just one set of data, and we see this in Honeycomb, but we can also see this in Signa. So the same spike as we showed earlier is right here in the last 6 weeks, right? We can zoom in a little bit, and we can see right here during this period of time, huge spike in duration. Now, would you like to see another set of telemetry we have?
Yeah, we as maintainers, we want to go, what the heck goes on in our repositories? Give us some more.
All right. So this is a set of metrics called the VCS, which stands for Version Control System metrics. Who feels like sometimes it takes a long time to get a change into OpenTelemetry?
No one? Come on. Whoever put something, issue PR, and got a bit to wait a bit to get that approved. Show hands. Yeah. Come on. Okay.
It takes a little time, right? But how long does it actually take? Well, again, we can filter down into a repository. We can look at the contrib repository, and we can see that the average change time to approval is about 10 weeks. Now that, of course, has a lot of outliers in it, right? But the average time to merge is only 6 days once you get that approval. So they actually do pretty good. And again, those are averages, so there are certainly outliers that are captured there. But what about semantic conventions? Semantic conventions is another repository we can look at. I think Martin Thwaites made a statement in a recent talk that it's like if you get 30 engineers together talking about how to name something, it's going to take a while, right? And we can see it does take a bit of time. There's lots of dialogue and so forth, but these would be the repository metrics for the semantic conventions. And they have quite a few open changes. But they're going as fast as they can. And it's nice to be able to have these things, because once we can visualize them, we can try to improve them if the need fits.
Go SamConf. Woo! Let's go back to the slides and run through some more. So as you saw in the demo, we can use standard semantic conventions, and once it's emitted, you can choose the tool, the backend of choice, to run through the things. And now, let's talk about, why is it, can you move the focus here? So we're covering, what exactly are we covering today with the CI/CD semantic conventions?
Well, we've got the CI/CD pipeline attributes. That was one of the first things we did. So that's how you kind of denote or describe your CI/CD pipelines. So
we have the CI/CD pipelines. What's next?
We've also got deployment attributes. Sorry to whoever used deployment.environment name. I know we broke that one. But the other ones were certainly useful and helpful. And this is very good for calculating DORA metrics, right? What is a deployment? How do you describe a deployment? And then how can you calculate that from there? So deployment attributes are another thing we added. We've already talked about the VCS attributes. We added that. And we've also added some test attributes. By the way, this is all experimental, right? We've got to increase the stability. So, but the test attributes talk about test suites, cases, and so forth. And then we've also got how you describe some metrics. So we've got the VCS metrics, some CI/CD metrics, and how you're using those attributes there. But my favorite thing that I think we've added for the semantic conventions is the artifact attributes, specifically the attestations in those attributes, because that very closely aligns with the things that are going on in the supply chain levels for software artifacts, or the SALSA suite. So it's kind of like a bridge between security and observability.
Yeah, for sure. But it is important to say, we've talked a lot about SemConv, but the CI/CD SIG is not just about SemConv. One of the biggest things that we've been working on is specification for environment and variable context propagation, propagating context and baggage over environment variables. Now, we all know passing context over the network, which we usually do for microservices over the network, HTTP, gRPC, and there are well-defined specs for these. However, what do you do in case you have processes that can't communicate over the network, right? You have a process that spawns another sub-process or whatnot, things that happen very frequently in CI/CD pipelines. So this is definitely was a challenge that we've been challenged with for many years. We found issues open as far back as 5 years ago, back in 2020. And after a couple of attempts at writing an OTEP, an OpenTelemetry enhancement proposal, we finally got it approved late last year, 2024. So first of all, way to go on the OTEP joining. And the big news for all of you that we have now the first iteration of the specification open for review. So if you're into it, we're looking forward, we're keen to hearing from you about this first pass and how we can make it better. So that's on that.
Yeah, and this is going to be huge for CI/CD pipelines, right? That native instrumentation is going to be made possible. I think about cases like OpenTofu and Terraform. In fact, this is a screenshot from traces that are coming from the OpenTofu controller runners, passing context between environment variables. It was a demo that one of my colleagues did at DevOps Days in Montreal last year. Very early prototype, but you know, TerraGrunt already now supports traces. They're one of the precursors to the specification. And so I suspect now that we add this specification in place, more and more vendors are going to come to play, and we're going to have a lot of good support.
Give them the big news, come on.
Also, I know you said it's open for review, but big news, that spec got merged yesterday afternoon.
Woo! We should have done the merge on stage, but we're not as adventurous as that, so yeah. So that's the merge from yesterday, so go ahead and try it out. It's now available for everyone. And yeah, there's so much more that the SIG is up to. So we work on different signals, telemetry signals, metrics, traces, events, essentially logs. Also, you heard about the GitHub receiver. We also have a GitLab receiver at work, and looking into other receivers and for other platforms like Argo CD workflows and Jenkins. We have lots of discussions going on regarding receivers and prototypes and reference implementations for the specification. We're also looking into and expanding the semantic conventions to cover more domains. For example, the software outage incidents. What else? More types of instrumentation. For example, we talked about the environment variable context propagation. So there's work on SDK reference implementation for that, spec for that. We are looking at getting the long-term observability of the OTel project across the rest of the repositories. You saw some of the OTel observability. We want more of that. And the goal is actually not to stop just with OTel. The purpose is to have that as a reference implementation for other projects to be able to adopt it. So if you are maintainers of other projects, contributors or something like that, do check it out, a good reference implementation. All of that with the end goal of enabling observability across the entire software development life cycle. So with that, do join us. You have the QR code here and the link for the blog post that Adriel mentioned before that covers everything from the charter of the SIG to what we've been doing so far, to what's the roadmap and what we want to work on next. So do check it out, and also how to get in touch with the project. Some of the links, references are also here, like the Slack channel. We have a very active Slack channel, the OTel CI/CD on the CNCF Slack. We have weekly SIG calls on Thursday that are open for everyone to attend. Do join us. We have the GitHub repo, of course. So do scan the QR code and do get in touch with us. We'd love to have more folks involved. And a word about us, beyond being the SIG leads. I'm Dotan Horovits. I'm a senior developer advocate at the AWS open source team. I'm also the chief evangelist for the OpenSearch project under the Linux Foundation. Again, an observability open source project. So if you have any questions about OpenSearch, also happy to answer after the talk. I'm also a CNCF ambassador, and I also run the OpenObservability Talks podcast. That's me, and you can find me everywhere, as you can see, at Horovits. Adriel?
I'm Adriel Perkins, principal engineer at Liatrio. We're a consulting company out in the United States. And OpenTelemetry CI/CD SIG alongside you. Yeah, and last but not least, you can find us today, actually in an hour and a half, in 1,400 hours, at the OpenTelemetry Observatory. We'll have office hours between 2 and 2:30. We'll be there. We'll be happy to show you more of the demos. We're happy to hear your feedback, your comments, and how we can collaborate together. So if we don't have time now for more Q&A and chats, you'll find us at the OTel Observatory. It's in the S400 booth in the Expo Hall, in the showcase, Solutions Showcase. Find us there. All the other projects as well have time slots. So check out OpenTelemetry Observatory. We're Adriel and Dotan. Thank you very much for listening. We have time for Q&A, so if anyone wants, happy to pass the mic, and you can ask us questions also here. Oh. I'll give you a sticker of OpenTelemetry if you ask a good question.
Hi, thank you for your talk. The question is, where does the traces come from? Is it a native support from GitHub and GitLab, or do you write some custom code to collect it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So there's an OpenTelemetry component in the collector contrib repository that takes the events that come out of the GitHub webhooks, and the same thing works for GitLab, and it will convert those things into traces by taking, the start time, the end time, and creating deterministic IDs.
Just adding to that, so OpenTelemetry has a component called receiver. So you ingest it in the collector, and then it's being done. Our ultimate goal, by the way, and that's why we were calling for all the maintainers here, we would like to have a native one, so that my dream is for GitHub to emit natively the telemetry in this specification, or GitLab or Argo workflows or whatnot. That's the end goal. But for now, what's in our capacity, since we're not maintainers of this project, is we take the telemetry, we adapt it to the data model of the semantic conventions, and then we take it down from that point downstream, it's already standardized.
Hi, my name is Johannes. I'm from Dynatrace. First, great talk, great initiatives that you are driving. My question is now what's happening with the CD events. Are they now obsolete, or are they still relevant in the market out there?
They're definitely not obsolete, and what we've seen, obviously, the semantic conventions are expanding. I think deployments, for example, are very relevant for CD, so I'm not sure exactly which part of CD you're referring to. We have already constructs there, and we're expanding. Adriel, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, the original proposal for the first set of attributes heavily was influenced by CD events. We have some folks that we were talked to. Names are escaping me right now, but we would love to continue collaboration and figuring out where things fit in accordingly.
And we'd love to have Dynatrace folks involved in this, because we know that we bring a lot of experience. There was actually a demo on the talk on the last KubeCon North America, with Andy from Dynatrace together with, what's the name of the other company? I forgot that, with a Fitbit, that showed a demo of doing GitLab monitoring with a Fitbit. So I forgot the names and the name of the... Sorry, we're blacked out because we're on stage. It always happens. But any other questions? Come on, guys, on this side of the hall. Not to neglect that side. Anyone? Calling once, calling twice. Thank you so much for joining us.